The rain battered the windows of the small coffee shop, but inside, Ethan felt a storm far worse. His family's words echoed in his head, sharp as knives. Real men don't cry, Ethan, and they sure as hell don't love other men. He gripped his coffee mug, the warmth doing little to thaw the ache in his chest. Ethan, 28, had always been the sensitive one in his family, the one who wore his heart on his sleeve. Growing up in a conservative town in Ohio, he'd learned early to hide his tears and his truth. His father, a stoic mechanic, and his older brother, a football coach, saw his softness as weakness, his identity as a sin. When Ethan came out as gay at 19, their mockery became relentless. Family dinners turned into battlegrounds, with snide remarks about his lifestyle and his failure to be the man they wanted. By 25, he'd moved to Columbus, hoping distance would dull the pain. It hadn't. Now, sitting across from Liam, his boyfriend of 2 years, Ethan felt the weight of it all. Liam, 29, was everything Ethan wasn't. Confident, composed, a high school English teacher who commanded respect with quiet authority. His dark eyes held a steadiness that anchored Ethan, even on days like this, when his family's latest jab, a group text mocking his pathetic tears at a cousin's wedding, cut deep. "Ethan, you don't have to keep letting them in," Liam said softly, his voice cutting through the rain's rhythm. "They don't get to define you." Ethan forced a smile, but his eyes betrayed him, glistening with unshed tears. "I know, but it's hard when it's your own blood. They think I'm a failure. No house, no real job, no masculinity." He spat the last word like it was poison. Liam reached across the table, his fingers brushing Ethan's. "You're a graphic designer whose work is in galleries. You're more successful than they'll ever admit. And you're more of a man than they'll ever be." Ethan wanted to believe him, but the doubt lingered, a shadow cast by years of ridicule. He'd spent his life trying to prove he was enough. Enough for his family, for society, for himself. The idea of a home, a real one, felt like a distant dream. Renting a cramped apartment in Columbus was all he could manage, and his family never let him forget it. Still living like a college kid? His brother had sneered last Thanksgiving. That night, as they left the coffee shop, Liam draped his jacket over Ethan's shoulders against the chill. "What if we did it?" Liam asked suddenly, stopping under a street lamp. "What if we bought a place together? Our place, our rules?" Ethan froze, heart pounding. The idea was thrilling and terrifying. A home meant permanence, a stake in the ground. It meant building something his family couldn't tear down. But could he afford it? Could he face the inevitable backlash? I don't know," Ethan stammered. "It's a lot, and my family, they'd lose it." "Let them," Liam said, his voice firm but warm. "We'll do this for us." The next morning, Ethan woke to a new determination. He spent hours scouring real estate listings, his laptop screen glowing with possibility. Liam joined him, pointing out cozy bungalows and fixer-uppers in neighborhoods just outside the city. Each listing felt like a rebellion, a middle finger to the voices that had tried to break him. But doubt gnawed at him. His savings were modest, and his freelance income was unpredictable. Liam, with his steady teacher's salary, was the rock, but Ethan wanted to contribute equally. He didn't want to be the weak one again. Weeks passed, and they found it. A small, weathered house in German village, with creaky floors and a porch that sagged like it was tired. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, or it could be. The asking price was just within reach, but it would take everything they had. Ethan's heart raced as they met with a realtor, a kind woman named Maria who saw the spark in their eyes and didn't flinch at their clasped hands. "You boys are going to make this place a home," she said, handing them the paperwork. Ethan hesitated, pen hovering over the offer sheet. His family's voices crept in again. "You'll never amount to anything." He glanced at Liam, who nodded, his eyes full of quiet strength. Ethan signed, his hand shaking but resolute. The offer was accepted 2 days later. Ethan couldn't sleep that night, torn between exhilaration and dread. His family would find out eventually, they always did. And when they did, he knew the mockery would escalate. But for the first time, he felt something stronger than fear, hope. As they began the process of inspections and financing, Ethan threw himself into the dream. He sketched designs for the house, bright walls, a cozy reading nook, a garden where they could grow vegetables. Liam teased him for his endless Pinterest boards, but his pride was evident. They were building something real, something that screamed we exist and were not ashamed. But the first test came sooner than expected. Ethan's brother, Mark, called out of the blue, his voice dripping with condescension. "Heard you're playing house with your boyfriend," he said. "Good luck with that. You'll probably cry when the pipes burst." Ethan's stomach churned, but he didn't hang up. "We're buying a home, Mark. Something you'd know nothing about." Mark laughed, cold and sharp. "A home? You? Don't kid yourself, Ethan. You're not built for that." The words stung, but Ethan held his ground. "Watch me," he said, and ended the call. That night, he lay awake next to Liam, staring at the ceiling of their rented apartment. "What if he's right?" he whispered. "What if I'm not enough for this?" Liam turned to him, his hand finding Ethan's in the dark. "You're enough for me, and this house is going to be ours. Let them talk. We'll show them." Ethan clung to those words as they navigated the chaos of closing on the house. Every step felt like a battle, against his family's judgment, against his own insecurities, against a world that sometimes felt too heavy. But with Liam by his side, he began to believe they could win. The day they got the keys, Ethan stood on the porch of their new home, the wood creaking under his feet. The house was theirs, a testament to their love, their resilience. But the real fight was coming. His family's annual reunion was in 2 weeks, and Ethan knew they'd have plenty to say. For once, he was ready to face them. Not with tears, but with proof. The reunion loomed like a storm cloud over Ethan's newfound joy. His family's yearly gathering at his parents' sprawling farmhouse was a tradition steeped in expectation, and, for Ethan, dread. This year, though, he had something to hold on to. The keys to his and Liam's new home, still warm in his pocket from the day they'd signed the final papers. The house in German Village was a fixer-upper, with peeling paint and a roof that needed love, but Ethan saw its potential. He and Liam spent their first weekend there tearing out old carpet, their laughter echoing off bare walls. Ethan's sketches for the space grew more ambitious. A teal accent wall in the living room, a reclaimed wood table for the dining area. Liam, ever practical, tempered his dreams with budget realities, but his eyes sparkled with the same excitement. "We're going to make this place ours," Liam said, wiping sweat from his brow as they hauled debris to the curb. "Every nail, every paint stroke, it's us." Ethan nodded, but his mind drifted to the reunion. His family would see the house as another failure, another way he didn't measure up. He could already hear his father's gruff voice. "You bought a dump? Should have stuck to renting." The drive to his parents' house in rural Ohio was quiet, the countryside blurring past as Ethan gripped the steering wheel. Liam reached over, squeezing his hand. "You don't have to tell them anything," he said. "This is our victory, not their stage." But Ethan wanted them to know. He wanted them to see what he and Liam had built despite their scorn. He wasn't sure if it was courage or defiance, but he felt it burning in his chest. The farmhouse was bustling when they arrived, cousins and aunts spilling onto the lawn with plates of barbecue. Ethan's mother greeted him with a stiff hug, her smile not reaching her eyes. His father barely looked up from the grill, and Mark, his brother, smirked from across the yard. "Well, look who showed up," Mark called. The sensitive artist and his friend. Liam's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm, his hand resting lightly on Ethan's back. Ethan forced a smile, his heart pounding. The day passed in a blur of small talk and forced pleasantries, but the tension simmered. At dinner, as the family crowded around the long oak table, Mark struck. "So, Ethan," he said, leaning back in his chair, "heard you bought some shack in the city. Hope it doesn't fall apart before you do." Laughter rippled through the room, sharp and cutting. Ethan's face burned, but he met Mark's gaze. "It's a home," he said, voice steady. "Something Liam and I built together. You should come see it sometime." Mark snorted. "A home? With him? What's next? You gonna start knitting doilies together?" The table erupted again, and Ethan's father shook his head, muttering, "Waste of money." His mother stayed silent, her eyes fixed on her plate. Ethan felt the familiar sting, the urge to shrink, to cry. But Liam's hand found his under the table, grounding him. "It's a beautiful house," Liam said, his voice calm but firm. "And it's ours. You'd be surprised what love can build." The room went quiet, the weight of Liam's words hanging heavy. Mark opened his mouth to retort, but Ethan cut him off. "We're hosting a housewarming next month," he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "You're all invited. See for yourself." The drive home was silent, Ethan's hands shaking as he replayed the moment. Had he really invited them? Liam reached over, his voice soft. "That was brave. I'm proud of you." "I don't know if it was brave or stupid," Ethan admitted. "They'll tear it apart. They'll tear us apart. Then we'll show them they're wrong," Liam said. "We'll make that house so damn perfect they'll have nothing to say." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Ethan and Liam threw themselves into renovations, sanding floors and painting walls until their hands were raw. Ethan's designs came to life, a warm, inviting living room, a kitchen with mismatched mugs they'd collected from thrift stores. Every choice was deliberate, a reflection of their shared vision. But the housewarming loomed, and with it, Ethan's fear. He started waking up at night, his mind racing with what-ifs. What if his family showed up and mocked everything? What if the house wasn't enough? What if he wasn't enough? Liam noticed the change, the way Ethan's smiles grew forced, his sketches less frequent. One evening, as they sat on the porch with takeout pizza, Liam set his slice down and turned to him. "Ethan, talk to me," he said. "You're carrying this alone again." Ethan stared at the horizon, the city lights flickering in the distance. I want them to see me, really see me. Not the kid they laughed at for crying, not the guy they think is less of a man because I love you. I want them to see what we've built." "They will," Liam said, pulling him close. "But even if they don't, this house is ours. This life is ours. That's what matters." Ethan nodded, but the doubt lingered. The housewarming was a week away, and he knew it would be more than a party. It would be a reckoning. He spent hours perfecting every detail. String lights on the porch, a playlist of their favorite songs, a spread of food that screamed, "We belong here." He wanted his family to walk in and feel the weight of what he and Liam had created. The night before the party, Ethan stood in the living room, surveying their work. The walls glowed with fresh paint, the furniture a mix of thrifted finds and careful craftsmanship. It wasn't perfect, but it was home. He turned to Liam, who was hanging a framed photo of them from their first date, a goofy selfie at a county fair. "Do you think they'll come?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Liam set the frame down and pulled Ethan into a hug. "If they do, they'll see who you really are. And if they don't, we'll still have this. We'll still have us." Ethan buried his face in Liam's shoulder, letting the warmth of the moment steady him. Tomorrow he'd face his family. Tomorrow he'd show them what love could build. The morning of the housewarming dawned bright, the sun casting golden streaks across the hardwood floors Ethan and Liam had spent weeks refinishing. Ethan woke early, his stomach knotted with nerves. Today was the day he'd face his family, not as the boy they'd mocked, but as a man who'd built something real. He and Liam moved through the house in a quiet rhythm, setting out chairs, arranging flowers, and checking the playlist one last time. The porch was strung with fairy lights, the kitchen table laden with homemade food, Liam's lasagna, Ethan's attempt at a charcuterie board. Every detail was a statement. This is our home. This is our life. By noon, friends began to arrive, their laughter filling the house. Ethan's co-workers from the design studio admired his sketches framed on the walls, while Liam's teacher friends swapped stories about unruly students. The warmth of their support eased Ethan's nerves, but the question lingered. Would his family show up? At 2 p.m., a familiar pickup truck pulled into the driveway. Ethan's heart sank. It was Mark, alone, his expression unreadable as he stepped onto the porch. Ethan braced himself, but Mark's first words caught him off guard. "Nice place," he said, glancing around. "Didn't think you had it in you." Ethan forced a smile, unsure if it was a compliment or a jab. "Thanks. Where's Mom and Dad?" Mark shrugged. "They're busy. You know how they are." The words stung, but Ethan refused to let them ruin the day. He led Mark inside, where Liam was pouring drinks for guests. Mark's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. The cozy furniture, the photos of Ethan and Liam, the undeniable evidence of their life together. "So, this is your thing," Mark said, his tone clipped. "It's our home," Ethan said, meeting his brother's gaze. "We worked hard for this." Mark didn't respond, but his silence felt like a small victory. As the afternoon wore on, more friends arrived, their energy lifting Ethan's spirits. He caught glimpses of Mark watching from the sidelines, his usual smirk absent. For once, Ethan felt like he was the one in control. Then, just as the sun began to set, another car pulled up. Ethan's breath caught as his parents stepped out, his mother clutching a casserole dish, his father's face as stern as ever. Ethan hadn't expected them to come. He glanced at Liam, who gave him a reassuring nod. "Welcome," Ethan said, his voice steadier than he felt. He led them inside where the party was in full swing. His mother's eyes widened at the sight of the house, the warmth of the decor, the joy of the guests. His father, though, remained stone-faced, his arms crossed. "This is nice," his mother said, her voice hesitant but genuine. "You've done a lot with it." Ethan's chest tightened. It was the closest thing to approval he'd ever heard from her. But his father's silence was deafening. As the evening progressed, Ethan felt the weight of his father's gaze, the unspoken judgment. He tried to focus on the laughter, the clink of glasses, the music, but the tension was inescapable. Then, during a lull in the conversation, his father spoke. "So, you spent all your money on this?" His tone was gruff, dismissive. "Hope it's worth it." The room quieted, guests exchanging awkward glances. Ethan's face burned, but before he could respond, Liam stepped forward. "It's worth everything," he said, his voice calm but unyielding. "This isn't just a house. It's a home. Our home." Ethan's father scoffed, but his mother placed a hand on his arm, a silent plea for peace. Ethan took a deep breath, his voice steady. "You don't have to understand it, Dad, but this is who I am, who we are, and we're proud of it." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mark, of all people, broke the silence. "It's not bad, Ethan," he said, his voice softer than usual. "You did good." Ethan blinked, stunned. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. His father said nothing, turning to refill his drink. His mother offered a small smile, her eyes glistening. The moment passed, and the party resumed, but Ethan felt a shift. He'd stood his ground, and for the first time, his family hadn't laughed. As the night wound down, Ethan and Liam stood on the porch, watching the last guests leave. Ethan's parents had left early, his father's silence unbroken, but Mark had lingered, even helping clean up. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. "You were incredible tonight," Liam said, pulling Ethan close. "I was terrified," Ethan admitted, leaning into him, "but I felt free. Like this house, this life. It's ours and they can't take that away. Liam kissed his forehead. They never could. The housewarming marked a turning point, but Ethan knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. His family's acceptance, if it ever came, would be a slow, uneven journey. But standing in their home, surrounded by the life they built, Ethan felt a strength he hadn't known he had. This was his victory, not just the house, but the courage to live his truth. Months passed, and the house in German Village became more than a structure. It became a sanctuary. Ethan and Liam settled into a rhythm, their days filled with small, beautiful moments. Cooking dinner together, arguing over paint swatches, planting herbs in the backyard. Ethan's sketches adorned the walls, each one a piece of his heart made visible. But the shadow of his family's judgment lingered, even as he tried to focus on the life he was building. Work kept Ethan busy, his freelance design projects picking up steam. A local gallery featured his work, and for the first time he felt like his art was more than a hobby, it was a legacy. Liam, too, thrived, earning a promotion to department head at his school. Their successes were intertwined, each milestone a brick in the foundation of their shared life. But the memory of the housewarming gnawed at Ethan. His father's silence, his mother's hesitant kindness, Mark's unexpected softness. It was a puzzle he couldn't solve. He wanted their approval, even as he told himself he didn't need it. The tension came to a head one evening when a letter arrived, the return address in his mother's careful handwriting. Ethan opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a short note. "We're proud of what you've done with the house. It's not easy for us, but we're trying. Love, Mom." Enclosed was a photo of Ethan as a boy, smiling at a family picnic, his eyes bright with innocence. He sat on the couch, staring at the photo, tears streaming down his face. Liam found him there, wordlessly pulling him into a hug. "She's reaching out," Liam said. "That's something." "It's not enough," Ethan whispered. "But it's more than I expected." The note sparked a fragile hope, but it also stirred old wounds. Ethan began to wonder if he could bridge the gap with his family, not just for himself but for Liam, who deserved a family that embraced him too. He decided to invite them for dinner, a smaller, quieter gathering than the housewarming. The planning was meticulous. Ethan cooked his father's favorite pot roast, and Liam baked a pie, their kitchen filled with the warmth of anticipation. When the doorbell rang, Ethan's heart raced. His parents stood on the porch, his mother clutching another casserole, his father's expression guarded but softer than before. Mark was there too, his usual smirk replaced by something almost sheepish. Dinner was awkward at first, the conversation stilted. Ethan's father asked about the house's plumbing, a safe topic, and Ethan answered with pride, detailing the repairs they'd made. His mother complimented the decor, her eyes lingering on Ethan's sketches. Mark, surprisingly, asked Liam about his teaching, listening intently as Liam described his students' progress. Then, over dessert, Ethan's father spoke. "This place, it's solid," he said, his voice gruff but lacking its usual edge. "You boys did good." Ethan's breath caught. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. His mother reached for his hand, her touch tentative but warm. "We didn't understand before," she said. "We're still learning. But we see you, Ethan." Mark nodded, his eyes meeting Ethan's. "I was a jerk," he said simply. "I'm sorry." The words hit Ethan like a wave, washing away years of hurt. He didn't trust them fully, not yet, but they were a start. He glanced at Liam, whose smile was a quiet triumph. After they left, Ethan and Liam sat in the living room, the silence comfortable. "I didn't think they'd ever come around," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "They're trying," Liam said. "That's more than you had before." Ethan nodded, his heart full. The house, once a symbol of defiance, was now a bridge, a place where his family could begin to see him, not as a disappointment, but as a son, a brother, a man in love. But life, as always, had more challenges in store. A week later, Ethan got a call from his gallery contact. A major client wanted a series of designs, but the deadline was tight, and the pressure was immense. At the same time, Liam faced a crisis at school, a budget cut threatening his department. The stress tested their relationship, late nights turning into arguments over small things, dishes left in the sink, forgotten errands. One night, after a particularly heated exchange, Ethan stormed out to the porch, the cool air calming his racing heart. Liam followed, his voice soft. "We're in this together, Ethan. Don't shut me out." Ethan turned, tears in his eyes. "I'm scared we're not strong enough for all this. Work, family, everything." Liam took his hands, his grip steady. "We bought a house, Ethan. We faced your family. We can handle this too." The words anchored him, and they spent the night talking, rebuilding their connection. The house, with its creaky floors and warm lights, was a reminder of what they'd already overcome. They were stronger than Ethan had realized, their love a foundation that could weather any storm. The pressure of Ethan's gallery deadline and Liam's school crisis didn't let up, but the house remained their refuge. Each evening, they returned to its warmth, finding solace in shared meals and quiet moments on the porch. Ethan's designs were coming together, each piece a reflection of his journey. Bold colors, sharp lines, a defiance of the doubts that had once held him back. Liam, meanwhile, rallied his colleagues to fight the budget cuts, his leadership shining through. But the real test came unexpectedly. One morning, as Ethan was sketching in the living room, his phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Dad's in the hospital. Heart attack. Come home." Ethan's world tilted. He called Liam, who was at school, and within hours, they were driving back to the farmhouse. The hospital was sterile and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth of their home. Ethan's father lay in a bed, pale but stable, his mother sitting beside him, her face etched with worry. Mark stood in the corner, his usual bravado gone. "He's going to be okay," his mother said, her voice trembling. But it was close. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. He hadn't realized how much his father's presence, gruff and judgmental as it was, still mattered to him. Liam squeezed his shoulder, a silent reminder of his strength. Over the next few days, Ethan and Liam stayed at the farmhouse, helping with chores and keeping his mother company. Mark, to Ethan's surprise, was a constant presence, his apologies from the dinner now backed by action. He and Ethan worked side by side, fixing a fence, their conversation halting but genuine. "I was wrong about you," Mark said one afternoon, wiping sweat from his brow. "I saw you as weak, but you're not. This house, your life with Liam, it's strong. Stronger than I ever gave you credit for." Ethan blinked back, tears, the words sinking in. "Thanks," he said simply, not trusting himself to say more. His father's recovery was slow, but each day brought small improvements. One evening, as Ethan sat by his bedside, his father spoke, his voice weak but clear. "I wasn't fair to you," he said. "I didn't understand. Still don't, not completely. But that house, it's something. You did something." Ethan's chest ached, a mix of pain and hope. "We did it together," he said, thinking of Liam. "Me and him." His father nodded, a rare softness in his eyes. "Keep doing it." When they returned to Columbus, Ethan felt lighter, as if a weight he'd carried for years had begun to lift. The gallery project was a success, the client praising his work as raw and powerful. Liam's school won a partial reprieve on the budget cuts, thanks to his advocacy. Their home, once a dream, was now a reality that grounded them through every challenge. But Ethan knew the journey wasn't over. His family's acceptance was fragile, a work in progress. He and Liam began hosting regular dinners, inviting Mark, his mother, and eventually his father, once he was strong enough. Each visit was a step forward, sometimes small, sometimes significant. His mother brought recipes. Mark shared stories of his coaching days, and his father, though still reserved, listened more than he judged. One night, as they sat around the table, Ethan looked at his family and Liam, the lines between them softening. The house, with its warm lights and creaky floors, had become more than a home. It was a bridge, a place where love could heal old wounds. "I never thought I'd have this," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "A home, a family that sees me." Liam took his hand, his smile radiant. "You always had it. You just had to show them." The night ended with laughter, the kind that felt like a gift. Ethan knew there would be more challenges. His family's past wasn't erased, and the world outside their door wasn't always kind. But he and Liam had built something unbreakable, a home that stood as proof of their love, their resilience, and their truth. The seasons changed, and the house in German Village grew more lived in, its walls holding memories of laughter, arguments, and quiet nights. Ethan and Liam settled into a life that felt both ordinary and extraordinary. Ethan's art flourished, his designs gaining recognition beyond Columbus, while Liam took on a mentorship role at school, guiding new teachers with the same steadiness he brought to their relationship. But the past wasn't done with them. One crisp fall day, Ethan received an email from a distant cousin, Sarah, who'd been at the reunion but stayed silent during the mockery. She was visiting Columbus and wanted to see the house. Ethan hesitated. Sarah had never been cruel, but she'd never defended him either. Still, he agreed, curious and cautious. When Sarah arrived, she brought a warmth Ethan hadn't expected. She admired the house, her fingers tracing the frames of Ethan's sketches. Over coffee, she apologized. "I should have said something back then," she said, her eyes earnest. "I was scared of rocking the boat. But seeing you now with Liam, with this home, it's inspiring." Her words stayed with Ethan, a reminder that change was possible, even in small ways. He began reaching out to other relatives, inviting them to visit, to see the life he and Liam had built. Some declined, their silence a quiet rejection, but others came, their curiosity outweighing their prejudice. Each visit was a step toward rebuilding, not just with his immediate family but with the broader web of kin who'd once dismissed him. Meanwhile, Ethan's father's health continued to improve, though he remained gruff, his acceptance a slow burn. One day he called Ethan out of the blue, asking for help with a project, a shed he wanted to build in the backyard. Ethan drove to the farmhouse, Liam in tow, and they spent the day hammering nails and measuring wood, the work a language they could all speak. As they finished, his father handed Ethan a beer, a rare gesture. "You're doing all right," he said, his voice low. "Didn't think you'd get this far." Ethan smiled, the weight of the words settling in. "I had help," he said, glancing at Liam. Back home, Ethan and Liam began planning for the future. They talked about expanding the garden, maybe adopting a dog. The house, once a symbol of defiance, was now a canvas for their dreams. But the world outside wasn't always kind. A neighbor made a snide comment about the gay couple on the block, and Liam faced whispers at school about his lifestyle. Each jab was a reminder that their home was a haven, but not a shield. One evening, as they sat on the porch, Ethan voiced his fears. What if it's always like this? The looks, the comments, what if it never stops? Liam took his hand, his voice steady. "Then we keep living. We keep loving. This house, this life. It's proof we're stronger than their hate." Ethan nodded, drawing strength from Liam's certainty. They began hosting community events at the house, potlucks, art workshops, gatherings for other queer couples in the neighborhood. The house became a beacon, a place where others could find acceptance, just as Ethan had. One night, as they cleaned up after a particularly lively potluck, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was a text from his father. "Proud of you, both of you." Simple, gruff, but monumental. Ethan showed it to Liam, tears in his eyes. "He's coming around," Liam said, pulling Ethan close. "It's because of you," Ethan said. "You believed in us when I couldn't." Liam shook his head. "It's because of you, Ethan. You showed them what's possible." The house, with its creaky floors and warm lights, stood as a testament to their journey. It wasn't just a building. It was a declaration, a home built on love, resilience, and the courage to be seen. Ethan knew the road ahead would have its challenges, but for the first time, he felt ready to face them, hand in hand with Liam, in the home they'd made their own. A year after the housewarming, Ethan stood in the backyard of their German village home, the garden now blooming with herbs and flowers they'd planted together. The house had transformed, its once sagging porch sturdy, its walls alive with color and memory. But more than the house, Ethan had changed. The boy who'd once hidden his tears was gone, replaced by a man who wore his truth with pride. Liam, too, had grown. His advocacy at school had sparked a district-wide initiative for inclusivity, and he'd become a mentor to queer students, offering the support he and Ethan had once craved. Their home was a hub now, a place where friends, neighbors, and even some of Ethan's family gathered. The wounds of the past hadn't fully healed, but they were scarring over, softened by time and effort. One spring evening, Ethan and Liam hosted a barbecue, the backyard filled with laughter and music. Mark was there, joking with Liam about football, while Ethan's mother helped set the table, her smiles no longer hesitant. His father sat quietly, but his presence was enough, a silent acknowledgement of the life Ethan had built. As the sun set, Ethan stood on the porch, watching the scene unfold. He thought of the years of mockery, the tears he'd shed in secret, the fear that he'd never be enough. Then he looked at Liam, laughing with their friends, and at the house behind them, a testament to their love. He'd bought a home, not just with money, but with courage, with defiance, with love. And in doing so, he'd silenced the voices that had once defined him. His family hadn't fully changed, but they'd begun to see him, to respect him. And that was enough. Liam joined him on the porch, slipping an arm around his waist. "Happy?" he asked, his voice soft. Ethan leaned into him, his heart full. "Happier than I ever thought I could be." The house stood behind them, its lights glowing in the dusk, a beacon of what they'd built together. It wasn't just a home. It was a victory, a love story written in wood and paint, a life that no amount of mockery could tear down. And as Ethan looked out at the people he loved, he knew he'd found his place in the world, not despite who he was, but because of it.